I'm sure you've had one of those moments where you showed a favorite movie to a friend, one that made you really emotional or gave you goosebumps, only for them to shrug it off and say something like, yeah, that's okay. And you're left there wondering, wait, why didn't it hit him like it hit me? Were you even watching the same thing? Well, the truth is, no, you weren't. Not exactly. What's happening was both of your brains were playing two different cuts of the same movie. By the end of this video, you'll understand how our brain edits reality and why no two people experience the same reality even though we're all living in the same world. These are some of the basic psychological concepts that you'd learn in your first Psych 101 lectures in university. Alright, let's get started with the idea of mental models. See, we all have our mental models of reality which we've built over time in life through which we make sense of the world in order to navigate it. You can think of it like a lens through which you see the world, or more accurately, it's like a blueprint of the world that we all carry in our heads. Now, they're not accurate representations of the world, but they're good enough to help us survive. And each one of us have different models. The main idea here is that what we see is very different from what's out there. While this idea is echoed in the works of several early philosophers, the term mental models was first introduced in psychology by Kenneth Craig, a Scottish psychologist, in 1943 in his book The Nature of Explanation. Here's a direct quote. If the organism carries a small-scale model of external reality and its own possible actions within its head, it is able to try out various alternatives, conclude which is the best of them, react to the future situations before they arise, and use the knowledge of the past events to adjust to new circumstances. Translation: your brain is like a mental simulator, a predictive machine. It is constantly imagining things before they happen so you can make smarter decisions. Our mental models have to be consistent, and it have to make sense. However, it is not static. We're constantly updating our models based on new knowledge and experiences. And there are a lot of factors that come to play in shaping our models. First one, selective attention. Do you guys remember the famous invisible gorilla experiment where you were asked to watch a video of two teams passing a basketball and were told to count how many times the balls get passed? And for some reason, most people never notice a person in a full gorilla suit walking by throughout the video. Now, why do we fail to notice the gorilla? Because our eyes work more like a flashlight than a camera. We don't see the whole picture. We only pay attention to what we find relevant at any given moment, both visually and cognitively. You didn't notice the gorilla because it was not relevant to you at the time. Likewise, in every waking second of our life, we're constantly filtering out huge amounts of information that's out there in the world and closing in on only the information that we find relevant. This means that in a way, we're all tunnel visioned all the time. This fact alone limits each of our perceptions to a great extent. Some early theories regarding this study are the Broadbent's filter theory and Ant's attenuation theory. A modern, updated, and a more comprehensive study of this phenomenon is done by John Vervaeke and Anne Riddell with the framework of relevance realization. Dr. Vervaeke's material are widely available on YouTube, so I'll leave a few links in the description if you want to explore it more. It is important to realize that this is happening in every single second of your life. In fact, you're doing it right now. You're paying attention to the screen while filtering out the rest of your peripheral vision. You could be focusing on the corner of your wall or the floor or the edge of a table or any random thing in your room, but you don't. Why? Because you don't find those things relevant. And what determines what you find relevant? Again, this could point to a lot of factors: your beliefs, your past experiences, emotional state, cultural background, personality traits. There are a lot of moving parts in psychology, and it's very easy for different concepts to get meshed in together and get convoluted. And it's very hard to boil everything down to a single model. However, one of the major factors that determines what we find relevant, which we'll talk about it here, is motivation. Motivation can be conscious or unconscious, but what you want affects what you see. If you're starving and walking down the street, you'll start to notice every bakery sign and food truck that passes by that you wouldn't normally notice otherwise. But when you're hungry, it will just pop out to you. This doesn't just happen on the spectrum of vision, but also on hearing, thoughts, emotions, and your overall sense-making. If a businessman walks down the street near a cafe, the thoughts that will be occurring in his head will be something like, I wonder how much this guy pays for the rent. How much does the revenue look like? While if an artist or a writer walks down the same street, he or she might be thinking something like, I wonder if the barista working there is actually happy with her life. Now you might be thinking, well, these are just different thoughts. Of course, we all have different thoughts. What's this got anything to do with reality? Well, everything. The thoughts that occur to us, the things that we see, the sounds that we hear, the emotions that we feel, the beliefs that we hold, and the judgments that we make, while all these things individually might seem small, but realize that over time, day by day, all these things tie in together and they feed into our mental models, which ultimately, consciously or unconsciously, shapes up our entire reality. Now, this might sound obvious on theory, but if we could ever just sneak inside someone's head for one day, like imagine that businessman swapping his consciousness with the artist, and vice versa, they wouldn't just be having different thoughts, they'd be experiencing a different reality. So, if selective attention filters what gets in, and motivation and all those other factors affects what we focus on, then how do we actually make sense of what we do notice? That's where cognitive schemas come in. When we hear the word dog, we immediately picture a four-legged animal which barks and wags its tails. We don't actively think about what a dog is and rationally come into a conclusion. This is because we have a schema for a dog. Schemas are a set of frameworks that helps us interpret the understanding of the world, people, objects, places, etc. It's like a set of folders in our brain that helps us quickly understand things by associating them into what we already know and think of it based on our past experiences, knowledge, and expectations. We start to develop schemas from our early childhood when we initially begin to make sense of the world. The concept of schema was first introduced by John Piaget in 1926 as a part of his cognitive development theory. While schemas are extremely useful and help us make sense of the world faster with quick associations, without the need to analyze every single detail, they can often be too simple and too biased as well, which can alter our perceptions by associating something to something that's not. For example, if we see someone wearing glasses, we can have a tendency to automatically think of them as intelligent or smart. Schemas can direct our selective attention into noticing only those attributes that already conform to our existing beliefs, leading us to neglect other attributes. In an experiment conducted in 1983, participants were asked to watch a video of a girl taking a test. They were told she was either from a rich family or a poor family, and they were asked to guess her performance on the test. Surprisingly, those who thought she was from a poor family rated her performance as worse, and those who thought she was from a rich family rated her performance as better, despite the identical footage. Just like we have a schema for a dog equals four-legged animals which barks and wags its tails, the participants likely had a schema, something like rich kids equal smart, poor kids equal not so smart. Now, these schemas aren't always conscious, in fact most of the time they're unconscious, but it demonstrates to us how much it can bias our perception without our awareness. There's also something called cognitive scripts. When you walk into a restaurant, you kinda already know what's gonna happen. You wait to be seated, you order, you eat, you pay, and you leave. It's almost like there's a script in play. In psychological terms, it's called a cognitive script. Cognitive scripts are a specific type of schema that deals with sequences of actions in particular situations. We all have different scripts for different scenarios that occur in our life, whether it's going to a restaurant, workplace, airports, etc. When someone doesn't have a script for certain situations, he or she would be puzzled. For example, when your introvert friend enters a house party for the first time, he or she doesn't know where to go or what to do, because he doesn't have a cognitive script for that occasion. Another factor that influences our reality in a little more subtler way is called cognitive priming. Ever notice how after watching a horror movie every little sound suddenly seems suspicious? Well, that's priming at work. It's a subtle yet powerful way our brain gets influenced without us realizing it. While schemas are long-term frameworks that we've built over time, cognitive priming is a temporary psychological process where exposure to one stimulus influences how we see or react to a subsequent stimulus. The effects are usually short-lived. The term was first popularized by Leonard Berkowitz in aggression studies and later by John Bargh and his colleagues in the field of social psychology. Priming constantly shapes how we see, think, and behave without our awareness. Marketers often use this trick to trick their customers. For example, if you walk into a store that sell luxury items, you'll notice they'll often use certain scents like vanilla or citrus in their environment. They're not just using those for aesthetic purposes. The pleasant smell makes you feel relaxed and happy, and it primes your brain to associate the store with comfort, luxury, and quality, which makes you more likely to spend money. Yeah, that's quite sneaky how that works. So, selective attention, motivation, schemas, scripts, priming, these are some of the individual factors that shapes our reality. But there's also another powerful force at play, the social construct of reality. Unless you're Mark Zuckerberg, if you walk into a business meeting with pajamas, you'll feel rather uncomfortable. You might prefer to wear a suit instead. This is not because wearing pajamas is a crime, but because it goes against what we collectively as a society decided as what's appropriate. Humans are social animals, and even though our models of reality are each unique to ourselves, we still need to have our model aligned with other people in society, family, and culture. Why? Because being socially accepted feels good, and being an outsider feels bad. We often adjust our perception to match others when we are in uncertain situations. One of the famous experiments in social psychology was conducted by Solomon Asch in the 1950s. He brought in participants into the room with several other people. What the participants didn't know was that the others were all actors. Everyone was shown a line, and then they were asked to choose which of the other three lines matched his length. The answer was quite obvious, but after hearing all the other actors give the same wrong answer, many participants went along with the group, even though they knew it was wrong. This demonstrates how our reality can be influenced by those around us. From childhood, we are constantly absorbing shared social narratives about success, morality, gender roles, status, etc. And over time, these shared beliefs becomes part of our identity, which influences how we see and react to the world, what we think is true, false, right, wrong, and so on. To wrap this up, think of human perception as an ongoing complex dance between biology, psychology, and the social world that we live in. We're not dealing with reality here, we're dealing with our limited models of reality. These models are primarily designed for survival, to help us navigate the threats in the world, and to maintain a sense of internal consistency and well being. But there's also a social aspect to our models. It needs to be aligned with those around us. We constantly adapt our beliefs to fit into the worlds others see, and in doing so, we shape the stories we tell ourselves and each other. So, next time your friend doesn't react to your favorite scene, remember that it's not just a difference of opinion, it's a difference of perception. Sure, the screen was same, the actors said the same lines, the music hit the same chords, but what actually played in your minds was two entirely different cuts. Because we don't experience the world as it is. Instead, we interpret it through our distinct individual mental models shaped by years of experiences, influences, and biases. The way we see the world isn't just about what's out there, it's about what's inside our heads.